Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible.com. Get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial at www.audibletrial.com/WiseGuyRadio. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. That's at www.audibletrial.com, AUDIBLETRIAL.com/WiseGuyRadio. This is the Wise Guy Radio Show, a podcast dedicated to educating and inspiring through conversations with today's top talents in the world of glass. We will be dissecting their journeys in hopes to deliver actionable content that you, the artist, can start implementing now, helping you grow not only as a creative spirit, but also a successful artistic entrepreneur. With a little organization, relationship building, and your artistic ability, you can obtain greatness. Climb aboard, whether an artist, retail owner, or enthusiast. We have a ton of fun in store for you. Welcome to the Wise Guy Radio Show. What's happening, all my beautiful people? Welcome to the Wise Guy Radio Show, episode number 38. This is Jay Michael, your host, and I am super excited to be here today with you guys. Before I get going with the show here, I wanted to just quickly announce that I am going to be changing the schedule of the show. Saturdays seem to be working out better for me to make sure that a consistent third day of the show is going to be released. And I wanted to just kind of announce that real quick so you guys won't be expecting shows on Fridays. It'll be Monday, Wednesdays, Saturdays. Still doing the same formula, and I'll be posting on my Instagram later today the new schedule lineups and how the shows are going to look, and also some future guests we have scheduled too, which is going to be a lot of fun, and also shows that we already have in the banks. So, yeah, there you go, and thank you again for tuning in. This show is dedicated to inspiring, educating, entertaining all you people out there in the glass world, glass lovers, glass blowers, retail stores, enthusiasts, people that manufacture and create our tools, all that stuff. So I hope you guys are really enjoying the show, and it's an honor and a privilege to be here. And this week we we had the Pipe Classic, number 10, I believe it was, and it was pretty fun watching the Pipe Classic on YouTube this year. Got the Big Galleria show coming up here in about 2 weeks down in Miami. Coming up soon, this next Friday, I'll be in Tallahassee, Florida at Tobacco Leaf Gallery, where my dude Gabe, who has the shop up there, and they are this month's Smoke Shop of the Month. They're having an open house kind of celebration for their 6th anniversary at their property up there. And just go to tobaccoleafonline.com, and you'll be able to find all the information there on their homepage and events page. And yeah, they got a badass collection of glass. There'll be myself and 10 plus other glass blowers there doing demonstrations all night, and food trucks and art shows. And so if you're in the Florida area or North or South Georgia or whatever, somewhere in the Southeast or whatever, come check it out and come say hey. I'll be broadcasting from the shop and also be on the torch melting the day away. So look forward to meeting everybody that comes out. And today we are going to be getting into our second installment of the Glass Knowledge page that my dude Shane started on Instagram. And you can go follow them at Glass Knowledge on Instagram and see what they're doing on a weekly basis. They've got 2 or 3 techniques and profiling artists that we have on the podcast here, and also some people that they just decided to choose randomly. It's pretty cool, though. So him and I get into this topic of conversation is wrap and rake. And the wrap and rake technique it's a fun technique. It takes a lot of practice to really fine-tune it and get it to a perfected tech. But it's definitely a foundation for a lot of areas in the glass world, learning manipulation and heat base and your torch and the materials and how different colors work compared to clears and transparent and opaque colors. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. So it was an interesting conversation we had. And other than that, don't have much else for you guys today except for that starting Monday, we have a next guest, pretty cool guy coming on. He's got about 6 months under his belt on the torch. Don't forget to go to wiseguyradio.com and register for our email newsletter that we're going out weekly. Tips, tricks, hacks, some exclusive content, and also podcast links and events coming up. And speaking of events, again, if you guys have anything going on out there in the glass world, whether they're celebrations for anniversaries for shops, events like the Pipe Classic, shop having demonstrations, whatever. If you're a glass artist, you're going to be going doing demos, you want to hit us up also. It's info@wiseguyradio.com. That's info@wyzguyradio.com. And there you go. Love you guys. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care. See you.
Now it's time to share some glass knowledge with your host, Jay Michael, and the creator of @GlassKnowledge on Instagram, Shane Penn.
What's up, everybody? It's time for our new segment we are doing today. This is the Glass Knowledge page, and Shane and I are here today to discuss wrap and rakes. It's our next technique in the line. What's going on, Shane?
Same old. Just getting back to the States, been adjusting in really nicely, so it's been good. How are you doing this week?
Hell yeah, man. Same here. Sweat my ass off. It's not November yet, so we're still hot.
And up here in the northern part of Minnesota, it's a lot cooler this time of year. We're already getting that fall weather. I can already feel the leaves are going to be changing soon.
Yeah, I've been seeing pictures already, man. It's kind of scary. It's crazy.
Yeah, when it gets cold up here. I mean, at this point in time, I think all of us are wishing for some of that Florida warmth. Send it our way, will you?
Hell yeah. We'll send it your way as fast as possible. So today's wrap and rake is one of the foundational basic techniques in the glass game in the pipe world, and it's a really good technique to start off with to learn your heat base, to learn your torch, to learn your supplies and tools. It goes along with pulling points and some of the basic bullshit you got to kind of start off with if you want to really learn the medium. And the wrap and rake spoon is one of those techniques that will teach you how to manipulate your glass, how to get it right in heat base, how to stretch it and pull it, how to make sure that your surface of your clear is the right temperature. There's a lot of little intricacies that are involved in making these techniques, and if it's done properly with the right amount of silver and gold fuming, or even just silver fuming, you can really make a really pretty piece. And as if you guys go check out the @Gloss Knowledge page on Instagram, look at the wrap and rake link, you will see some current work on there by artists that have taken this older traditional technique and now really expanded upon it. What you got to say about that, Shane?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think you described it best right off the start, which is, it's this multifunctional technique that will really help glass blowers learn. It's kind of like the wax on, wax off of the glass industry, at least for beginners. You're doing this thing repetitively and you don't know why, but it's teaching you all these small skills in there. So, Mr. Miyagi style, yeah. learning through dedication and things that you don't quite, you don't think about it at the time, but you're like, wow, that really applies to everything else. For those who don't really know what wrap and rake is, or for those viewers who are listening who are like, I don't know what you mean by wrap and rake, it kind of refers to any of those pieces you see out there with it looks like color. It's color on the outside that has been raked down. That looks like it's been stretched down in little points. So it kind of goes in a wavy form, and it looks very surface colory and
Yeah, it has a feathery kind of pattern to it, depending on
that is a good
the process. Yeah, it's neat because the basic idea on how this application is done is you have a tube of glass that you're going to apply this color to, and going back to the beginning of our first segment when we talked about borosilicate and the heat base and temperature, the surface of the glass has to be the same temperature as the glass being applied to it so that it sticks. You're not completely blending it in 100%, but you need this color that you're applying to your clear to stick. So basically, the concept is that you take your tube of glass that's on a blowpipe or on a pulled out point that you've stretched out as a handle for blowpipe, and you get that nice and hot in your flame, but it's not hot enough to start to change the shape of the glass. It's just hot enough to where the surface is now pliable a little bit to where the glass is going to stick to it. And then, being that I'm right-handed, I will heat up with my right hand. I'll heat that tube of glass in the flame. And then at the same time I'm doing that, I'm also starting to warm up the very tip, probably about maybe 1.5 inches of my color rod to start the process of getting that hot. And basically the idea is that your color rod has to be consistently heated all the way around the surface of the glass in that section. So when you go to stretch that glass out to actually spin it and wrap it around the clear, it will pull away evenly and smooth. Like the molecules in the glass have to all be at the same heat rate and temperature and everything. Otherwise you get a weird pull and it doesn't pull even. So basically the idea is now what you do is now you have your hot tube of glass that's clear, you have your color that's also the same temperature and liquid, and inside and just on the very edge of your flame you're heating up your color, and you stick it to the very top of the tube, and then you spin your right hand counterclockwise, and by spinning it counterclockwise you begin to pull the glass color away from the rod and it starts to wrap itself around the tube. But the thing you have to remember when you're doing this is that your rod is getting shorter as you're pulling the glass away. So you're also not only having to pay attention to where you're applying the glass on the clear tube, but you also have to pay attention to the consistency of your rod that you're heating up. Because if you don't do it properly, you can just continue to pull glass off, and the glass will actually break off in little strands because it's getting pulled away too fast, and the heat actually breaks it off. If done properly, you can get a nice heat base on your color, get your point heated up really quickly, and then stick it on there and spin it and you make it depends on how many layers of the wrap you want to do or whatever. But basically, it's a up motion and then a down motion if you want to do like an overlaying kind of thing. But it's very important that your tube that you're applying the glass to is the right temperature, because if not, when you go to now rake the glass with a rod of clear, that color will actually pop off the surface of the glass of the clear. Your clear also can crack on you as well, but mainly that color will pop off. And I've actually had it pop off and stick to my lips before. And it doesn't. It doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't feel good. But once that color is on there, you now have a base of color to work with in a pattern. Your typical basic pattern is basically you wrap the glass just down the tube, maybe about 15 stripes of glass in a spiral. You stop that part. Then you go back and you warm up your point again so that the glass is now, the color is beginning to become blended into the point. And then you start at the very top of the point with your clear rod, and as you basically draw a line with your flame on the color, so you preheat this line of your color, and then you get your clear hot, and then you get it hot enough to where you can draw a pliable liquid form of a line of glass down that clear. And when you do that, it actually draws the clear, or the color draws the color down the tube and makes kind of a V pattern in there if it's done properly. You can overheat it and smear it if it's not done properly, But it's a pretty neat technique.
As I say, that's the sign of a good wrap and rake, though, is that clear V. Like you're looking for those nice, clean points. If it's super rounded or if it's smeared, that shows that's showing where like you could use improvement, and that's showing, I don't want to say sloppy, but that's the difference between like a really, really pristine wrap and rake and more of a like still learning, still trying to figure it out. And to most people looking at it, it's just going to be like, oh, that's cool. But if you're looking at enough of these pipes a day, and if you're like you're really looking for something nice, look for those nice points on each of the lines.
Yeah, because I like those basic, simple, like 6 to 10 spiral stripes going down with like maybe 5 or 6 rakes, going down. Like a lot of times I'll do like 3 and then go in between those 3 and go down. Another fun thing you can do as well is you can go bottom up when you rake it as well, so you get a reverse pattern, which really makes this neat feathery kind of pattern. But you can also take the same idea. Instead of having to draw a straight line down the tube, you can take your tube of glass and you break it into segments of, say, 2/3, where like the bottom 2/3 you just use where you do your straight down lines on what would be the neck of the pipe, and on the head of the pipe you can do like little triangle patterns, like up and down, really quickly kind of patterns. So you can separate the segments of the raking process where you can get all these different variations and patterns. It really depends on what you're looking for. You can also lay like a layer of color down, and you can rake it, and you can do another layer of color and rake that. If you do also color changer type stuff, you can do a nice silver fume, like a really light silver fume down first, wrap clear around that, rake it through with clear. Then you do a layer of gold fume, and then maybe a little bit of silver, or a little bit of silver and a little bit of gold, and continue to build up layers of color changing patterns. You can do it like 4 or 5, 6 times if you want, where you really have this thick layer of pattern that you've done. And that way, as a piece changes, you have a process of where like layers are actually changing colors because of, it's not a chemistry-based thing. It's because the resin from whatever you're using and to smoke out of your pipes creates a black backdrop basically for the area. And there's been back in the day when wrap and rakes were made, they say it could take up to 3 to 5 years for a spoon to fully change colors, because the entire piece has to be caked with this dirty resin on the inside, which tastes like shit in the long run. But if you want to see your piece fully change colors like that, that's what you have to do. Nowadays, with the modern community, we like to clean our pieces every day. So you don't really see full color changing wrap and rakes anymore going around.
I find that the hand pipes are really much the color changing pieces, but I'm not seeing many color changing tubes out there, just because that's where things get a little gnarly and a little gross. But I think what you pointed on is a really good point as well, is that wrap and rake is the basis of it, and that realistically there's so many variations, there's so many different ways you can do it, so many different ways to add color, that the possibilities, like any of these techniques we will be discussing in this post or future post, is really just at the bane of your creativity. Like, how creative are you, and how can you make it yours? How can you make it different? And maybe how can you push it to something that no one's seen before? Like, does this work in other styles? What colors haven't been used? Like, I haven't seen a wrap and rake opal tech yet. Like, who knows?
Yeah. Or uranium yet. It'd be fun to see like a cobalt spoon that's got a wrap and rake, uranium tech to it that you don't see until you go into a black light.
I've seen a little bit more and more of like a lot of people doing a lot of the uranium, or a lot of this, like, you can't see it work with a color behind it, where it's only visible when you are using a UV light, and you're like, oh, this clear piece is kind of cool. And then you hit that with the UV light, and it's like, boom! Look at all this crazy design work that's hidden. So
yeah, it's fun. Yeah, and what's also neat with the wrap and rake techniques too is depending on the color you use. Like for instance, if you're using like an exotic green or blue, or a blue moon, even a lot of those colors have a lot of metals in them. So the oxidation that happens when the glass is being hit by your flame causes the color to react, and it brings this oxidation kind of reduction color to the surface. So when you actually rake it with clear, it actually protects. If you do it properly and with the right flame setting, you can actually protect the color. So when the color that's behind the clear rake is a different color than the color that's exposed in between your lines of your raking. So you can literally take one color, wrap it around a piece, rake it a couple times, and you have this variation of the same color and variations of color on one pipe. Like it's pretty neat when doing it. There's also with like the gold and silver techniques are the same way, where you can do like silver in a couple spots or gold in a couple spots that are different, and they, as you rake through it, you have these segmented sections of the pipe that change in variations of colors because of that whole thing. It's neat.
Right.
But also when you get into other colors, for instance, the ones that oxidize, because they do put off a fume of a metal, that metal will stick to the surface of the glass. So now you have a whole different type of technique that you can take that color and use that for color changing properties by, again, adding more layers of clear over it and protecting it too. So it's a fun different way of kind of playing with the color. It's interesting stuff.
And I think it's a technique that is tested throughout time. If we want to get into the history of this a little bit as well, wrap and rake, like from my research when I was doing the original post for wrap and rake, I was amazed at how far back this technique actually goes. And realistically, it actually goes all the way back to the Egyptians or further. And I was amazed to see these really beautiful ornate glass blown vases or vases, like where different parts and tombs were found with just this beautiful wrapped coloring on it, like these beautiful blue vases with like this white wrap and raked color. And it's found in ancient Egypt. It's found in ancient Greece, like a lot of their glass blowing as well. And so it's a technique that has been around for almost as long as glass has, or at least ornate or colored glass has been around in any different style. And it's not just a borosilicate like term or technique by any means. It was, it's been perfected and it's been used throughout the last couple thousand years in all different glass mediums, from furnace blowing to soft glass blowing to anything and everything.
Yeah, because you get into like like the soft glass industry and the furnace works. Like those guys will do the same idea where you have a vessel and you do a body. It's called a body. The idea is it's called a body wrap. Even if you're doing it on a hand pipe or the furnace work, it's a body wrap, where you actually wrap that color around the surface of the body. But then you can go into a mold, like a pineapple mold or a star-shaped kind of mold. And when you go into that mold, it actually will cause and create the same effect of the raking process by going into that mold. And you can have that same wrap and rake look where there wasn't any kind of clear added to it. And the same goes with the smaller and the borosilicate things. Even with bead makers and people that do small jewelry and what have you, that do flower patterns, a lot of it's the same idea where they do a wrap pattern, but then they take a tungsten pick and they go with a tungsten pick, and you can actually rake the color itself as well with the tungsten pick. You can do a lot of cool flower patterns. You can take a spiral on like if you say you have like a pipe that you're making, and the head or the face of the spoon, you can do a cool flower pattern by having a spiral of color on there, and then you go from outside, basically the outside edge of the round shape to the very center. You can draw it in with a tungsten pick, and do that like 5 times, and you actually are creating 5 petals by doing that. You got to clean up the center a little bit to get rid of some of the crap. But those are just different ways that you can do this wrap and rake technique, not necessarily having to use a glass rod to actually rake through the color. It's pretty, it's neat. Just the way, like you're saying, it's been used for so long by so many people. It's used in all kind of industries.
Huh, I didn't know that. That's actually really interesting. So I think a good part about it as well is like, we've talked about why you learned it and where it comes from, but how does it affect our industry is something we can't not talk about either. Realistically, the wrap and rake really made its prevalence in the 90s. I feel like that was the dawn of pipes. That was the first thing. The first pipes were clear and kind of janky and looked pretty awful. And then as things started to progress, I feel the wrap and rake was really where it started to blossom. That, even, I want to say, right around the time, even before fuming, that's all you could really find on the market was wrap and rake.
Yeah, and it seems, too, I think the main reason for that at the time was when you are applying this color, you're already heating up your glass. You're adding the color, which is hot. You're raking through it. Because when you actually rake through the glass, you're really heating up your tube, like really, really heavily. So by the time you get to that last rake, like your 5th or 6th rake, your tube is pretty saturated and hot. So you might as well just slap a punty on the head of that thing and go ahead and shape it out, make a pipe out of it. And also because of the wrap and rake technique, it also helps to blend the color in, make it a little bit more consistent. So when you do make a shape out of it, your shape is more consistent. To where like in the earlier color changer pieces, a lot of it was just, well, not a lot of it, but it was all clear. And it was a lot of clear that was applied in different areas of the tube or whatever it was that they were creating their pipes out of. So you had these inconsistencies in the glass. So when you go to stretch out a nice even neck on a pipe, it wouldn't stretch out even because, say, one half of it or one side had like this really thick area to it because of the clear you added to it. Where the wrap and rake really makes a nice, consistent, all-around piece in the actual material itself. But then because of that, because it was found, like, I mean, myself, man, when I was doing production, I was able to create and make literally 20 to 25 spoons an hour, in a production line just for myself. And it was great money. It wore me out after a while. But because of the speediness of this piece being made, the importers started to bring them in because they could manufacture them just as fast, sell them for $1 or $2. And the smoke shops were like, why am I going to buy this from an American for $5 when I could buy it from China for $2,
And I mean, that was the time period where like there was no distinction between American glass and China's glass, or foreign glass, where the only difference was price. There was no I don't want to say quality. There was quality difference, but it wasn't apparent, and it wasn't something the consumers were looking for. It wasn't like going out and buying a lawnmower where you're like comparing prices, comparing models, and looking at it. It was, this kind of underground culture where it's like, yeah, this is what we got. Check out the cool purple on this one. You like purple, right? Like people are basing judgments just on color alone. They're not looking at where it was coming from or what. So I feel that at that time point there was a lot of pressure in the industry to make as much money as possible. And I mean, there's always going to be that in any capitalist industry as well, where you're going to see a drive for profit maximizing and cost minimization. But sudden influx of imports and the fact that stores weren't no longer buying a lot of wrap and rakes from artists, caused a lot of artists to either pursue or to push the wrap and rake further, but it also allowed them to pursue different styles such as line work and inside out work. It's the stay ahead of the competitors idea where, America's always thrived on creativity, while a lot of these countries, especially in the 90s and early 80s, were all about replication. They could take a product and completely replicate it. And, I've seen a lot of foreign pipes where it's literally the exact same pipe, same colors, pulled the exact same way every single time. They look almost identical. And, there's something to be said about that being identical, but that's because the person that's making that is sitting behind a torch and they're told, this is what you're making. You are making this exact thing. It's not an artistic process at that point. It's now a production process. And if there's not a blurred line between that, your product suffers. I mean, yes, it has its consistency, but that's not necessarily the thing that is wanted in the glass industry, since it's kind of a showy thing. The consumer, especially in America, want something different than everyone else that has it, or they want something that's unique to themselves. And I think that comes along with the American idealism of being unique and of being an individual, especially in a free thinking culture such as the functional art industry. Yeah,
but it's interesting too. It's on that same point, even though this is totally off topic, but it coincides with this whole import thing. Is in my first 10 years or so, the industry was totally different. Being in this now for almost 17 years. The last 6-ish years where things are changing has completely changed also the way we work. And myself and a lot of my glass friends that have been in this since the 90s, we're all starting to break out of the mold of production because we had to make production to compete with the import stuff, but also because there was only a few of us out there that were doing it and the demand was so high. But it was also the smoke shop industry, they were putting themselves out there on the lines as well to sell our products. So they felt they needed to charge more for their work that they were buying because they had to keep themselves in business and they're putting a risk out there. Almost as if they felt they were putting a risk out more than what we were as an artist that was creating the product. But because we were underground and behind the scenes a little bit, they were, So it was understandable. But once the import came in, it then became they were wanting the import stuff. And the wrap and rake was one of the first. And it actually wasn't even really raked. It was mostly just a wrap piece. It was a really thin... a lot of it was silver fume on the inside. They would get it hot, and they would give it a spirally twist, so it gave like a silver fume spiral inside the pipe. And then they would, once that tube was hot, they would then wrap glass around like the head or something like that, and then blend that in, shape it out into a spoon, call it a day. But it was like super fucking thin, really shit garbage. I mean, they were more or less disposable pipes, is what it came down to. But it still killed the wrap and rake industry. So then we then transitioned into the next thing, which was the inside out pipe, which we'll discuss on a different show.
Yeah.
And then we can discuss then also how the import more or less killed the inside out, thing, So we're having to constantly evolve and move forward as we compete with the foreign markets that coming in.
And I think the cool part is that now as the industry is actually going towards like, there's a lot. I mean, it's still very prevalent in like a lot of smaller smoke shops, but there are these artist galleries and there's art stores out there that are only selling American glass, and that means that's giving artists a chance to actually, maybe make a little bit different, like variation on the wrap and rake, or kind of bring back the creativity of the form. Like, I think that's where the wrap and rake can really succeed right now. Is that you don't need to make a wrap and rake spoon if you can make this cool sculptural piece and still do a wrap and rake over it or do something else over it. Like, there's still potential there for improvement. Like, you can have your piece's form itself is just as important as the shape and form is just as important as the colors you choose.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think that's something to be remembered.
Yeah, I think when the lathe really got introduced into the glass and the shape that the lathe could create on a larger scale, that shape then turned into the smaller scale, but also the introduction of the influence of Venetian glass and what have you. So, like you're saying, through the evolution of this industry, we've taken old techniques. I mean, Steve Seislove, we talked about it, was a great example. With his style and his look, where it's gone from you learn how to do pattern, you learn how to do shape, and then you figure out how to put your own twist and spin on both together. And now you got these guys out there that are creating amazingly beautiful wrap and rake pieces that will blow your fucking mind. And you're like, how the hell did they do that? And then you tell them, this is a technique that's been around for 20 plus years, and they're like, oh, no way, it's, whatever. So that's why we're here doing this segment as an educational process through the show, not only talking about the process, but also the history of it, and why it is that we do it, and the origins of it, and now where we're at, and the artists that are now creating it as well. So I hope you guys definitely dig it.
Yeah, I agree completely. One of the artists I found when I was searching for like different material and stuff was this Nick Bailey glass, and like Nick Bailey glass, to give him a little shout out. But good guy, helped us a lot of information. But him and a few others like are making these. He made a few tubes that are just completely like wrap and raked small mini tubes, and they're just wild, like unlike any wrap and rake thing I've ever seen. I kept, in research, it was just all spoons. And to see an artist actually push out and, take the time to artistically like pick a color palette that will work and meld together, and then take the time to wrap and rake it with some swirls in there and do some really cool overwork, just, that was really refreshing to know that it's not dead. The wrap and rake is far from dead. It's it's even going through like almost a revitalization at this point as we get away from that foreign industry. And like, if anything, remember, people, like, if you're supporting glass, I mean, I'm assuming if you're listening to the show, we're just preaching to the choir here, but don't support the imports. Like, support your local glass artists. That's really where it's at. That's what it's all about.
So I hope you all are enjoying these segments. If you have any questions, things you think we said that were wrong, not informationally correct, please let us know, because we do not want to spread any bullshit. We want to be out there honest, but we also are very transparent that we're not. I feel I'm somewhat of an expert because I am involved with this hands-on. Shane is learning this as he goes, which is why him and I come together, and he is very, very good at going on and doing research. I mean, you guys go check out the At Glass Knowledge page. You'll see the in-depth, amazing stuff, bro. So again, I'm so glad you guys are doing this page.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. And like, John and myself have been, I put at least like 5-6 hours of research in before any post, and that's along with like talking to other artists. That's on top of talking to other artists and making sure like I correct my information beforehand, or even reaching out to the community. So yeah, please come on, check out the page. We want glass artists, we want glass enthusiasts, we want newcomers to get involved, and just the newcomers can come and read, and if you have some knowledge, come on and drop it by. Like, we want to hear you. I want to hear you. I want to have a conversation with you. And if there's a topic that you want to hear about here or on the page, let us know. Like, we're just trying to build this community one person at a time, and it's been in the dark for a long time. We've been really secretive, and I think it's time to change that a little bit. Let's get some info out there. Let's start teaching people.
Heck yeah, and you can further find this information on Instagram at Glass Knowledge and also at wiseguyradio.com. We are going to be starting a glossary. All this information will be there as well. And we'll also be throwing this stuff into our weekly newsletter as well. So if you want to subscribe to our newsletter, just go to wiseguyradio.com, go down to the bottom of the page where it says subscribe, put in your information, and you will be hooked the F up. And we will see you guys next Wednesday. Take it easy. Come join the fun and celebrate Tobacco Leaf's 6th anniversary with a huge party at Tea Leaf. The party starts at 6 p.m. and ends around midnight. They will have free beer, live music on stage, live glass blowing from 10-plus artists, street performers, fire breathers, jugglers, aerial acrobatics, local art, live painting, and local art booths, store-wide sales, fun giveaways, and raffles all night long. You can find out more information under their calendar at tobaccoleafgalleryonline.com. Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of the Wise Guy Radio Show. If you have any questions, comments, or remarks, please leave them in the show notes page area where it says comments. We'll see you soon. Have a wise night.
You're listening